I think it's, for all of you who come for the first time to an ATBC meeting, I hope you are really engaged for the next 25 years or so. And coming to all these meetings is a great experience. So with that, this is your house. This is your home. Bienvenidos a su casa. And I hope that this meeting is really fruitful for the whole ATBC community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diego. And last but not least important, I have the honor to present you to Karime Unda Arp, Secretary of Environment, Biodiversity, Energy, and Sustainability of the state of Oaxaca. Thank you, Karime, so much for being here with us.
Muy buenas tardes a todas y a todos. Voy a hablar en español, porque estamos en Oaxaca, estamos en México y también hay que tener una variedad de lenguaje. También para que todos los que nos están también igual visitando de otras partes de México. Pues bueno, primero quiero agradecer a la doctora Lucia Lockman, al doctor Juan Posada Hostlerer, a la doctora Ekbal de Gortari, a doctor Pérez Salikurp, disculpen, y por supuesto al doctor Miguel Martínez Ramos, a Susana Alejandre y a todo el comité de la organización por la invitación y por este gran esfuerzo que hicieron. Y también quiero saludar a la academia, a todos los amigos que estoy viendo acá, amigas y amigos que estoy reconociendo que vinieron. Pues bienvenidos a todos. Es un honor para mí, por parte de la Secretaría de Medio Ambiente, Biodiversidad y Sostenibilidad del Estado de Oaxaca, estar en este importante encuentro internacional de la Asociación para la Biología Tropical y la Conservación, donde van a converger saberes, diferentes enfoques, territorios y disciplinas para dialogar sobre uno de los temas más urgentes y trascendentales de nuestro tiempo, la conservación de la diversidad tropical y la construcción de un mundo más sostenible. En nombre del gobernador, el ingeniero Salomón Jara Cruz, les damos la bienvenida a Oaxaca. El gobernador tiene un firme compromiso con la defensa del territorio, el fortalecimiento de las capacidades locales y el impulso hacia una agenda ambiental al que pone el centro la justicia socioambiental y el respeto a la vida. Comprender el origen, la evolución y el mantenimiento de la diversidad tropical sigue siendo uno de los grandes desafíos en el tema científico, pero también es un tema ético de nuestro tiempo. Las actividades humanas transforman aceleradamente estos ecosistemas y los factores sociales, económicos y culturales que los afectan requieren respuestas que vayan más allá de un enfoque biológico tropical y tradicional. En este sentido, la sostenibilidad ya no puede entenderse como una meta, sino más como una relación viva y constante de construcción entre los pueblos, los territorios y los procesos ecológicos que sostienen la vida. La investigación multidisciplinaria, interdisciplinaria, transdisciplinaria que de aquí se impulsan nos muestran el camino para comprender lo complejo, actuar desde lo colectivo y proponer soluciones que reconozcan tanto la ciencia como el conocimiento local. Desde Oaxaca, un estado megadiverso, que es el estado con mayor biodiversidad de México, que también es un estado indígena y profundamente comprometido con sus raíces y con sus recursos, reafirmamos los desafíos que se nos están presentando en este siglo, que se exigen alianzas reales, una humanidad científica y una valentía política. Nos unimos a este esfuerzo global con la convicción de construir un posible futuro donde la diversidad no solo se conserve, sino también que florezca. Les deseo mucho éxito en estos trabajos que se van a realizar en este congreso para que podamos seguir sembrando la ciencia, la comunidad y la esperanza. Muchas gracias a todas y a todos.
Thank you so much, Karime. And please join me to thank all of our authorities, representatives, directors, and secretary for such a lovely introduction and welcoming. I invite you to take your seats now. And before starting with our first plenary session, because in ATBC we We care about this huge family we are. We do care about how to take care of all of us, not only the planet, plants, animals, but we people. We have some important messages from the ATBC Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that I call to the stage that have some words for you. And then we will start with our plenary session.
Inclusion Committee, which is the DEI committee. Welcome to ATBC. This is an announcement that you're going to hear again and again throughout the conference. Just to keep it short, all registered members in this room probably remember that you have agreed to adhere to the code of conduct of ATBC. In the rare case that you don't remember it, you can find it on the ATBC website, all right? Nevertheless, we are the DEI committee. I will ask each one to introduce themselves.
Lou Santiago.
Lou is the chair of the committee. I am the co-chair, Vinita Gowda.
Farah Carrasco.
And Sumita Chatterjee.
And we all hope, and the committee is actually much bigger than just 4 of us, good conduct yourselves, but that if you see any case of discrimination and harassment, you will bring them to our notice and help us make ATBC 2025 an inclusive, equitable conference. There's a workshop that is also part of our DEI commitment to the society. Please try to attend it. It's there in the schedule SWS 6. Thank you and welcome all.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's a great honor open this remarkable gathering, this annual meeting, and I want to begin by thanking all of you, all the participants of all around the world, for being here and for joining us in this vibrant space of exchange, reflection, and collective action toward a more sustainable planet. My name is Marco Antonio Vázquez Dávila. I am from Oaxaca, like Miguel, and I wear this traditional attitude of the Tacuate people, the opossum people, the people that speak mixed language, but is known for their unique cultural identity. In their worldview, the Tacuate people are the opossum, the tlacuache in Spanish, or in Nahuatl, and the opossum care to us, the people, the fire, the life, and the memory. I do not pretend represent all the indigenous and Afro-descendant people of Oaxaca, but I am one of them. From this place, I speak to you not only as a scientist, but also as someone deeply rooted in this territory and history. Oaxaca, as my colleagues said, it's a biocultural jewel, home of an extraordinary biodiversity and dozens of indigenous nations who have sustained it through centuries of knowledge, resilience, and care. We hope that your time here allows you to engage not only with the science, but the plural landscape of language, foods, rituals, and ecological wisdom. Now, it's my privilege to introduce to our keynote speaker, a pioneer of the study of biocultural systems and domestication in the Neotropics, Dr. Alejandro Casas. He's a Mexican scientist with a master's degree from the Faculty of Science in La UNAM and a PhD in plant sciences from the University of Reading in Inglaterra. Since 1997, he has been a full-time researcher at the Instituto de Investigaciones en Ecosistemas y Sustentabilidad de la UNAM. He has the 3 level of the National Systems of Researchers. His work is internationally recognized in the fields of biodiversity management, ethnoecology, and evolution of domesticated plants, animals, and microorganisms. His research also explores landscape and ecosystem management, sustainable use of biotic resources, and in situ conservation of genetic heritage, always with a strong emphasis in the interdependence of ecology and culture. Dr. Casas have 2020 scientific articles, 14 books, 200, sorry, 220 scientific articles, 14 books, and 110 capítulos de libro. And he has trained generations of scientists, supervising more than 70 theses at the undergraduate, master, and doctoral levels. He has taught extensively in the UNAM and other Mexican universities, and for nearly 2 decades, he has co-led an international field research course at Universidad Nacional Agraria La Molina in Peru. He's also contributed with the creation of Mexican institutions like el Instituto de Investigaciones y Ecología y Sustentabilidad del UNAM. Lo voy a decir en español. Y ha inspirado, estoy traduciendo de mi traducción del inglés, y ha inspirado a cientos de colegas y estudiantes con un énfasis ético, con un rigor científico y con un profundo respeto por los sistemas tradicionales de conocimiento. Por favor, únanse a mí para recibir a este brillante investigador, maestro y ser humano, Dr. Alejandro Casas.
Well, I would like to have the presentation. Well, thank you. Good evening. Buenas tardes. I would like to the kind words of Marco Antonio Vázquez. Thank you very much, Marco. He is a very good friend, a colleague, and an extraordinary person. And I also would like to thank the organizers of this. It is possible, and for inviting me. The title of this talk is the title of actually a big editorial project which is in process, involving 200, more than 200 colleagues from different countries, with several groups of organisms and landscapes in the Neotropics. Our purpose in this project will be a book, is to share our views and experiences investigating management and domestication, and we hope to have soon this book in the next few months. And for the moment, we share with you the main ideas that inspired the project, and I will show the main ideas around it. Well, let's start. Okay. Interactions between humans and nature have been the subject of scientific interest for centuries. In the last century, it has become accepted that both societies and nature are systems, and that these systems are interacting. Such interactions have led to the construction of systems of knowledge and worldviews that mediate practices and techniques through which people and nature interact. Management is therefore at the center of articulation between social and natural systems. It has been recognized that social and natural ecosystems intersect, indicating their deep interlinkage. More recently, it has been recognized that this intersection is wider and deeper than previously considered. The idea of considering society and nature as separate entities has been questioned, and such questioning gains increasing consensus. The concept of socio-ecological systems has emerged, and it helps to see that human activity has a direct impact on natural systems and vice versa. What we understand as management involves multiple forms of interactions between humans and biodiversity. These interactions may involve specific parts or functions as well as entire systems. These involve actions and decisions aimed at satisfying needs. Such needs are not only utilitarian, but also ethical, aesthetic, spiritual, or the need to satisfy curiosity. The interactions may be directed toward the use, conservation, restoration, or planning the roles of areas in a territory. We should also keep in mind that management may involve different scales. One dimension can be seen at the different levels of organization, from individuals and populations to ecosystems and biosphere. Another dimension is the time period over which processes occur, which may be days, years, or centuries. The spatial dimension is also important, as processes can occur at square meters, kilometers, or the entire planet. Social organization may refer to the involvement of households, communities, countries, or the global social issues. All of these scales interact with each other from the top down and from the bottom up. Social processes influence natural ones and vice versa. Biocultural processes may include ecosystem functions such as pollination and seed dispersal, and evolutionary processes such as domestication. And assessing such complexity requires novel approaches. An important biocultural expression is not that. Well, chin. No sé qué pasa, pero bueno. No sé qué hacer, oigan. Well, it's time to relax. Okay. An important biocultural expression is a fraction of biodiversity that has been incorporated into human culture. This picture shows a general panorama of what can be found in a literature review. In green at the top, we can see the thousands of species described by science, while in red, those recorded by ethnobiologists as being included in human cultures around the world. The numbers in blue show the proportions of biodiversity incorporated into human cultures. Plants and vertebrates have the most significant fractions, as you can see. However, insects and micromycetes are also important in some cultures. For instance, in Mexican and Amazonian cultures. The black numbers at the bottom are data from Mexico. And you can see that nearly 1/3 of insects and mushrooms reported as useful in the world are used by Mexican cultures. In general, microorganisms are very important to humans in many aspects of their lives, but it is difficult to establish their numbers in this general panorama. Other particularly diverse groups, such as crustaceans and mollusks, are important in the human economy. These groups are diverse, but ethnographic studies about their interactions with humans are relatively. For example, in Mexico, nearly 5,000 species of each group have been inventoried, but only 100 species of each group have been recorded as useful by ethnobiologists. Interactions biodiversity can be classified into three. One type is extractive and includes fishing, hunting, and gathering natural products. This type of interaction is commonly considered to be the simplest, but no, not necessarily. It may involve complex strategies and techniques and includes most species with which humans interact. A second type involves changes and adjustments to the habitat of wild species to favor their availability. Because this management involves wild species, we call it silviculture. The third type includes domesticated species. Most species included in this category are plants. In fact, only 100 species of animals have been recognized as domesticated, while thousands are plants. Note that the range of species in this category is very wide. This is because there is no consensus about what constitutes a domesticate. There are some concepts debated among scholars, those marked in blue, are concepts debated among scholars studying domestication, but we cannot go deep into them now. Perhaps the most familiar process to everyone in this room is domestication. Naturalists in the 18th and 19th centuries began to define and study it. Darwin used domestication as an analogous process to understand the diversification of life in nature. The origin of species is dedicated to, and 9 years later, Darwin expanded it into 2 huge volumes. Artificial selection was described by Darwin as a relatively simple mechanism involving the selection of seeds or vegetative propagules of desirable plant phenotypes and reproductive male and females in animals. But after decades of studies of human selection, we can say that these processes are commonly more complex. At the population level, these processes allow us to construct models that explore the divergence between wild and domesticated sets of organisms. The concept of domestication syndromes has been helpful. It emerged since Darwin's times, but it is continually debated, especially when it looks for generalizations, which has no consensus among people studying domestication. In each case studied, the researchers must identify the relevant traits to analyze the divergence patterns, the intensity of management and selection, as well as the resulting divergence can be evaluated. And both processes are proportionally related. This is a simplistic representation of divergence, but in studies of real cases, we commonly find multiple routes of divergence. This theory has been constructed based on approximately 200 species in the world. Therefore, the new challenge is to deeply study the in higher number of species and analyze the different scales at which the processes operate and how they influence each other. Exploring divergence caused by humans. In our experience studying plants, morphological, reproductive, physiological, genetic, and phytochemical traits traits described as domestication syndrome are effective, but not in others. Therefore, we have invested effort to learn more about traits for different groups of plants. With this in mind, we have conducted case studies with herbs, small trees, and long-lived trees, as well as several species of agaves and cacti that are used for food and for other purposes. Interactions with animals are of great importance. Inspired by the idea of Melinda Seder of a gradient of interactions, we are exploring these aspects. We are not measuring, for the moment, any domestication syndrome. First, we are trying to understand how the relations between humans and animals and what happens with mushrooms and microorganisms. Mushroom management is related to forest management. Assemblages of yeasts and bacteria in ferment are also guided by management at the scale of environment, or in this case, micro-landscapes. But in fact, domestication at the population level is generally connected with management at the landscape level. This fact is evident in agricultural management, where silvicultural practices converge with crop cultivation. The antiquity of domesticating populations is relatively recent compared to the landscape through silviculture. Note that the green line represents silvicultural management and the blue line representing human selection are of different lengths. These lengths represent the history. Silvicultural management is much older than the history of crop domestication. One of the most ancient form of silvicultural management, Diego, firing the forest. Archaeological evidence that humans used fire a long time before practicing agriculture. The purpose of these fires is debated. Some scholars believe that were used for hunting, to clear areas and make hunting easier, to control the escape of animals to hunt them, and the animals that remain in the area. However, it has been reported that deliberate firing of forests was practiced long before Homo sapiens appeared on Earth. Therefore, silviculture appears to be older than our species. There is also archaeological evidence of other ancient silvicultural practices. For instance, this one, tree felling, perhaps for similar purposes associated with hunting as fire. Interestingly, this form of interaction allowed for a closer relationship with vegetation, including translocation, moving plants from side to side. This is a practice currently carried out in several parts of the world, including the Neotropics. And it is in fact a form of proto-cultivation, but in this case, occurring thousands of years before agriculture. This is another way of managing the landscape that involves managing hydrological systems to promote the growth of certain species in areas where they are usually scarce or absent. This is what Julian Stewart described and called irrigation system without agriculture in the Owens River Valley. It was an ancient system designed to promote the abundance of wild food, several cereals and vegetables in the picture. We have studied landscape level management mainly in agroforestry. We have found that the most common interactions, gathering and agriculture, commonly coexist with silviculture in the center of the picture, through which people allow certain species and phenotypes to persist, but commonly also promote their abundance and practice several forms of selection. An important finding is that useful wild plant species are richer and more abundant in agroforestry systems than in the neighboring forest. This pattern indicates that the selection favored species in agroforestry seasons of years, in this case, in the Tehuacan Valley. Another important finding is that selection also occurs in the variation of phenotypes of some important plant resources. We have found that this selection influences the abundance of intermediate phenotypes between those found in the wild and in cultivated. We have reported this pattern for species, including herbs, trees, agaves, and cacti. We call this result of selection in situ domestication or domestication through silviculture. Found that the pattern of that resemble that represented in this scheme, in which silvicultural managed organisms diverge from the wild ones. The cycles of use and fallow in agroforestry systems allow us to see that what we perceive as natural forests may have a history associated with ancient crop fields and even home gardens in human settlements that were abandoned at some point in history. In fact, we often find remains of pre-Columbian settlements, pristine forests. Remote sensing studies identified that nearly 18% of vegetation cleared for agroforestry systems in this type of forest recovered its cover in about 20 years, but with modified composition. This allows imagining the dynamics of change of vegetation over centuries or millennia. These are the types of mechanisms or types of silvicultural management that help us occupied by humans for millennia. Sites of Maya forest gardens described by Annabel Ford and Ron Knight, which have shaped and continue to shape the region's vegetation. Or, on a greater scale, we can consider the Amazon basin, where Carolina Levis, Charles Clement, and other colleagues, some of them are here, and many colleagues have identified human influences in the configuration of the current vegetation. This vast area contains terras pretas, or black earth, which are the remains of areas occupied by peoples for thousands of years and have a typical composition of vegetation in these areas. This basic principle helps visualize how communities managed by humans diverge from non-anthropic forests. Therefore, we can construct theories and indicators to analyze the divergence of biotic communities similar to those that at those population level. We should emphasize that, as with populations, the magnitude of divergence depends on management. The consequences of the have mainly been associated with changes in vegetation. However, through history, humans have also modified geoforms, soils, and hydrological systems. Yes, that studying landscape domestication, corresponding set of indicators. At this point, we have seen two levels of management, the population level and the landscape level. But a third type level of to analyze is the large-scale interaction among biocultural regions. We have centered our attention in Mesoamerica, Andes, and Amazon regions. We have emphasized the importance of analyzing these processes in the Neotropics, where several biocultural regions converge and have experienced mutual influence for thousands of years. Vavilov proposed one of the most famous theories on centers of origin of cultivated plants, which is summarized in this map. It shows that several regions of the Neotropics were among the most important. He was not in the Amazon and did not recognize the importance of this area, but fortunately, it was recognized as such since 3 decades ago. We are trying to analyze the mutual influence among these of the Neotropics. In order to identify the areas of origin of crops, it is important to identify a wild direct relative and the areas where these relatives originated. For example, these are the relatives of maize. For decades, this topic was controversial, but now molecular techniques allow for a more rapid and accurate answer to the question for these and other species. Information on the areas where the closest relatives are distributed, as well as the state of diversity of crops, is also relevant. All this information, for instance, allows identifying that Mexico is the most likely area of origin of maize, and we can use this methodology for analyzing the origin of other crops. But the stories may be more complex. This is, for instance, the diversity of maize in Peru, which is nearly similar to the diversity in Mexico. But there, wild relatives are absent. This illustrates the relevance of human culture in shaping variation. But of course, gene flow and other biological evolutionary processes are also important. Reconstructed. Recent archaeological and paleogenomic studies have demonstrated that maize migrated to South America since ancient times. In addition, historical gene flow of maize among biocultural regions has recently been documented by paleogenomic studies of materials from this site in Honduras. They have revealed a fascinating story of movement of maize from north to south and from south to north. Different regions of the Neotropics have influenced each other for thousands of years. Archaeology has helped us understand where the earliest evidence of domestication appeared, but the puzzle is complex and dynamic, as new tools help to discover new remains and date them. Archaeological, paleogenomic, and other molecular approaches allow increasing precision to identify remains and determine their age. The state of this puzzle will surely change soon. For example, these studies revealed that domestication of cacao occurred in the upper Amazon, nearly 5,000 the Amazon, and spread to Mexico relatively recently. This scenario is the most likely calculated based on phylogeography, but is consistent with the archaeological information that has been found so far. We have been working to identify the history of movements of crops and other useful plants among the neotropical regions. Some movements occurred in prehistoric times, some others more recently, but in pre-Columbian times, and some others due to European influence. We are now analyzing the history of crop interchange among regions, their mutual influence, and the characteristics that are unique in each region. This task requires a careful but fascinating review of historical and archaeological sources, together with botanical, genetic, and phylogeographic studies. We are collaborating with colleagues studies well, Mesoamerica, but also the Andine and Amazon regions to develop a general framework and methodological approaches for studying management and domestication in these areas. First, we have to start discussing how we define each management type and the species involved in such management. We are continuing this very constructive process. Research tools that allow us to reconstruct and precise information and expand the number of systems studies to study. These, the omics, are particularly informative. But also important are other research approaches that include paleogenomics and archaeology, cultural diversity studies, and multi-species ethnography. They allow us to keep in mind that management involves a complex network of interactions between humans and non-humans. Topics are home to more than 900 different cultures. Biological and cultural diversities are among the highest of the world. These cultures have lived there for thousands of years, and their knowledge and experience of managing local species and ecosystems are outstanding. These are crucial bases to develop any proposal for sustainable management of biodiversity. Unfortunately, it is also the region of the world where cultural diversity is more endangered. Therefore, designing projects for sustainable management has to consider as a primary goal the conservation of biocultural diversity. In few that I referred to at the beginning of this presentation, it aims to summarize the current state of research and perhaps more importantly, to enhance collaboration between research groups among regions and countries. And even more importantly, to contribute to make visible the role of traditional communities, their knowledge and millenarian experience of managing local species and ecosystems, and the crucial importance of conserving the biocultural diversity. Thank you very much. No sé. Do you have any comment or questions? You're welcome. I cannot see very well.
Do we have volunteers with the microphones, please? Okay, there's one person here and another over there. Please. One mic here. Can you take it there, over there? Thank you.
Gracias.
Hola, hola, ya. Mi pregunta va con respecto a qué podemos hacer con muchas de las especies o muchos de los registros que tenemos de uso de especies, pero que este uso es de tipo histórico, que de hecho todavía la gente te lo reporta, pero que lo reporta como mi mamá, mi abuela lo ocupaba para esto. Pero en la actualidad ya muchas de esas especies, y eso me pasó en un estudio reciente, yo tenía registradas, no sé, 100 especies y cuando les preguntas a las personas, yo estaba investigando sobre su valor económico, realmente el 10% de ellas aún tenían un uso y lo demás solo es un uso de recuerdo. Y creo que aquí hay mucha pérdida entonces de bueno, de usos o tradiciones y que por lo tanto también el valor que tienen esas especies para las poblaciones pues viene hacia abajo.
Well, the question is related with the loss of traditional knowledge about species. What to do? Well, the first important thing is to recognize the traditional knowledge, to have record, and to construct strategies of biocultural memory. Biocultural memory is strategy for rescue this information to share with the communities and different sectors of the society, and to and a kind of revival of the use and management of these species. This is not only the use of the species, but also, and perhaps more important, the management about that species. The management is now part of our main concerns, and we are trying to imagining what to do for several species. But we have this millenarian experience of managing the resources and ecosystems. So it is as important to rescue information on use, but also important to rescue information on management.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for this presentation. I really appreciate you positioning the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities as important in this kind of work, especially because I feel like interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary dialogue sometimes is really hard with the natural sciences. It's very siloed. And I appreciate you validating these other ways, like more biocultural and ethnographic ways. And my question to you is then, how do you envision moving forward to integrate different methodologies that really help us make this knowledge, like to revitalize this knowledge in community and in other contexts?
Yeah. Well, this question is related with the previous one. I think we need to invest efforts in constructing interdisciplinary approaches to understand what is happening, but even more importantly, the transdisciplinary aspects of research and interaction, which involves not only scientists, but people in the communities. I think that is a challenge. It is easy to use the term transdisciplinary, but to conduct it, to carry out it is very challenging. And we have to do something for improving our abilities to enhance the transdisciplinary approaches. I think that is the key for attending that concern and the previous one. And of course, the dialogue between scientists and other sectors of the society with people in the communities is the key for constructing that transdisciplinary processes, those transdisciplinary.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much for your presentation, really inspiring and fascinating also to see that the efforts of joining the Mexican, Central American, Amazonian part on the questions. I have a question about management, because I have been looking into these uses of a species, and what I notice is that a lot of times we are not really recovering what people are doing with the plants, how they are managing. And so I'm curious to hear from you if there are efforts in creating a protocol, a standardization to collect that information, because I think that will be very useful for this sort of studies.
Yes, that has been our main worry. Ethnobiologists have documented more information on use of species, but relatively few information on management. That is why we are emphasizing the need of documenting the management, and that is the center of our research. Establishing a protocol or several types of protocols is possible, and we are working in that direction. You can imagine that plants require a methodology, and crustaceans and mollusks and fishes need another approach. So in this work that we are carrying out, we are trying to invite several disciplines, several groups of organisms, and to share the methodologies in these different types of organisms. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. Hi. Thank you a lot for this amazing talk. My question is more about the key solutions for our biodiversity loss. Do you think, thinking about cattle ranching and also the monocrops cultivation in all of our neotropics, which is the main reason for our biodiversity loss, maybe one of the pathways that we can use for conservation could be changing our diet to our roots on domestication of our original plants and also animals, considering that they are already adapted to our region, and maybe we don't need to cut down the forest for that. Maybe that's the basic question and doubt that I have that can be a little bit controversial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, the response to this question is very complex. There are many problems, and public policies are, of course, needed for many problems like those that you mentioned. Mining, for instance, is also very, very important in some areas. I have seen the destruction of entire ecosystems in the Andes, for instance. And the key is the public policies. We need, of course, the participation of the society moving in favor of better public policies, but definitely these aspects are moved from the policymakers. So we have to push, but the policymakers have a high responsibility to organize these things better.
I was wondering how you see large-scale agriculture, industrial-scale agriculture in this global framework that you're trying to create. How does that come in?
The large-scale agriculture. Well, I think it is necessary to go to agroecology. I think in agroecology we have some responses to the concerns related to the destruction of ecosystems associated to large-scale agriculture. It's not easy, of course. Agroecology has challenges, but I think it is better to think in how improve the agroecological tools, the agroecology, to improve the agricultural production and to counterbalance the large-scale agriculture, definitely.
One more question over there, and
Yes.
maybe a last one, and that's going to be it.
Well, thank you so much for a very interesting talk, and also because it's very grassroots based. But I was wondering if also you could elaborate a bit more about the huge transition that is facing the Neotropics in terms of how especially market-based policies are being implemented and are actually hindering the possibility of a transformation in food systems. In other ways, different countries are implementing market-based policies that are reducing diversity rather than actually improving it or supporting mechanisms for increasing it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that problem is not only affects the Neotropics. That problem affects the whole world. I think the capitalism is the main problem. And to have a world order in this respect is a priority. It's not easy. It's the kind of global issues that have to be attended with proposals. We are trying to, everyone in this room want to propose from their perspectives what is possible, but the international order of economics is out of our hands. So we have to be conscious about the instances that regulate these problems at the world, at the global level. I think work to do.
Thank you for the beautiful overview. Looking backward, but probably you work for more than 40 years on this. So if you think about collection, about silviculture, domestication, what has been for you the biggest eye-opener? The biggest eye-opener for you on how you view this field over the past 40 years? What was for you the most novel thing that made you think differently about domestication?
I'm not sure that I understood the question, but can you repeat it? ¿Cuál?
Durante estos años que usted ha estudiado este tema, ¿qué es lo que más ha llamado la atención?
Mm-hmm. Well, Of course, domestication is very fascinating topic. And the most interesting thing is that the main ideas initiated by Darwin, we can see new different scenarios associated with agroforestry systems. I think that the phenomena occurring in agroforestry systems are very interesting because the crops, the domesticated crops, are coexisting with wild species and intermediate species between wild and domesticated, and they are in interactions. Probably these interactions between wild and domesticated species are one of the most fascinating phenomena. But as I said at one point, the intersection or the interaction with archaeologists has been fascinating. No? And now that I am interacting with paleogenomics, is really fascinating, I think, the kind of information that they can generate and identify is amazing. So probably that is one of the most attractive fields that I can mention.
Great. Les, please join me to thank you, Alejandro, for such a wonderful talk.
Muchas gracias.
Well, and now we kindly ask you to remain seated because we will begin with our cultural performance, followed by our welcome cocktail afterwards. And in the meanwhile, the stage is set for a philharmonic band that I will introduce in just a couple of minutes. I have some for those of you that will kindly be part of the reviewers. Yeah, to review the posters on the top of this ATBC meeting, the committee asks to please check the shared file to take note of the abstracts assigned to you tomorrow. So that's one of the housekeeping messages that we will be giving through the conference. And just wait a couple of minutes until this stage is set, and I'll be back. Hello. I invite you all to take your seats, please, because we are about to start again. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I ask you to take your seats, please, again. And es un placer presentarles a todas y a todos ustedes el día de hoy a don Abel Maclovio Pacheco García, presidente municipal de San Andrés Guayapan, Oaxaca. I introduce you all to the Mayor or Municipal President of San Andrés Guayapan, Oaxaca, Abel Maclovio Pacheco Garcia, and as he will introduce to the Philharmonic Band tonight, I will translate his words afterwards. So, adelante, don Abel.
Muchas gracias. Tengan muy buenas tardes a todos ustedes, queridos visitantes, extranjeros, nacionales. Mi nombre es Abel Maclovio Pacheco García, presidente municipal de San Andrés Guayapan, Oaxaca, México. Les damos la más cordial bienvenida a todos los países hermanos que visitan y aprecian a nuestro México, un país con tanta cultura e historia que la buena relación, respeto y la paz como hermanos siempre prevalezca. México, Oaxaca y San Andrés Guayapan los recibe con los brazos abiertos y con el respeto que todos ustedes se merecen. Sean bienvenidos. Nosotros, la comunidad, la autoridad de San Andrés Guayapan, traemos para ustedes nuestra música tradicional con la Banda Filarmónica Infantil y Juvenil de San Andrés Guayapan, y también están con nosotros nuestra marimba infantil, que lleva por nombre Maderas de Guayapan. Sean bienvenidos y queremos que la música que ellos desarrollen en este programa sea de su gusto. Por favor, gracias. Y el día que deseen visitar a San Andrés Guayapan, estamos a 20 minutos de aquí de la ciudad de Oaxaca. Un pueblo de usos y costumbres, un pueblo de tradiciones. Muchas gracias.
I'm sorry, I'm very bad at simultaneous translation, but I will do my best. His name is Abel Maclovio Pacheco Garcia, as I said, Municipal President of San Andrés Guayapan, Oaxaca. I'm gonna try to translate his words. He said, "We extend a warm welcome to our brother nations who visit us today and appreciate our country, Mexico, a country rich in culture and history. May good relationships, respect, and peace among us always prevail. Mexico, Oaxaca, and San Andrés Guayapan welcome you with open arms. You are all most welcome. This afternoon, we bring to you our traditional music performed by the San Andrés Guayapan Children's and Youth Philharmonic Band and our marimba group, Maderas de Guayapan." Thank you, Abel, again. Gracias. And the first piece we are going to hear, it is called Dios Nunca Muere. Ahora vamos a escuchar Son Calenda. We will listen to Son Calenda now. And the next piece is called Colibri, a hummingbird. Now, we will listen to Vengo de un pueblo alegre. I come from a happy town. Well, and the next piece, la siguiente pieza, it is called Cariñito. And I truly don't know how to translate cariñito because it's a very special word in Spanish. But because we are in Mexico and we are in Oaxaca, and this meeting is organized by Miguel Martinez, of course, you're all invited to join the co-chairs to dance this last piece. So please join us. Gracias. Join me to thank you, this wonderful band. Muchas gracias a la banda Filarmónica de Guayapan. Gracias, gracias. And now, before you leave all, I would like you to invite you to join us in the welcome cocktail outside the doors, where hopefully we can keep dancing and sharing this beginning of wonderful week. Thank you all. Welcome.